And our first comment comes from El Fu. She said, the evidence should definitely be shown. Hiding the photos, part of the evidence, I believe, is prejudicial. Now, jurors have right to know what supports the facts of the prosecutor or prosecutor in prosecution in order to make the juror's decision of guilty or not guilty, period. Christa, this was something that came up when we talked about it last hour. The defense was, of course, objecting, as good defense attorneys will do, to the introduction of the amount of and testimony of the actual crime scene and what was found there. I've often questioned this idea that crime scene photos were terribly probative. What's your thoughts on this idea of keeping out some of the more graphic photos and testimony just to protect the rights of the defendant?
Well, I think that there's a fine line there. I think that you're right that you do need to worry about protecting the rights of the defendant because crime scene photos are, by their very nature, prejudicial. Of course, they are going to fire up and anger a jury, cause emotions to stir within a jury, upset a jury. And that's, in part what they're designed to do. But the jury has the right and needs to know the full evidence in this case, right? And what it means. If the photos don't come in now in their entirety, they certainly would in any penalty phase, because it does go to the pure heinousness of this crime. But I think that there is a balance that needs to be made, and it's what is more probative than prejudicial, and you have to find that line to strike that balance where the scales of justice are weighed evenly there for the jury to see that what they need to see to get their job done.
Yeah, and I think judges generally do that. We've seen many trials here on Court TV where judges will not allow some photos and allow others, considering some to be maybe, too much for the jury to see. Our next commenter, Christa Lee Tyler, says, crime scene photos show the true horror of what people are capable of doing to others. They do not prejudice a jury against a defendant. Hiding the photos would be prejudice. Now, Christa, that's the second person who said that. It's an interesting take. They said by not allowing the jury to see those photos, that would actually be prejudicing the jury. I think it's an interesting take.
It is. I think that we need to remember, though, that the prosecution in this case is the state. The people are prosecuting this crime, not the victim's family. In any wrongful death case, I think that might be true. But here we have to worry about the constitutional rights of the criminal defendant, who is, perceived to be innocent until proven guilty. The descriptive nature of the photographs and what the evidence is can come in many ways. You heard very compelling testimony today of a fire chief that talked about what he saw when he got to this house and he entered it for the first time, and where he saw, quite frankly, the horror that he saw. So there's ways to allow the jury to know what happened without really beating them over the head with it.
Yep, fair enough. All right, Rhonda Erickson writes, prejudice a jury against the defendant. What is the alternative? Suppress evidence? Oh, good point, no question about it. But let me ask you this. I haven't had a chance to get you to ring in on this case itself. Where are you leaning in this case against Stanley Ford? We're coming back with guilty or not guilty?
I think that it's leaning towards guilty for me right now. I think that the way I think we spoke a little bit earlier today about how the evidence is starting to tie together. Now, we heard about the crime itself initially, and now we're starting to see more and more of the evidence tying him to the crime itself. So I think that it's a case that is very upsetting. 2 houses, 2 fires, so much loss of life. And I think that we're going to probably end up seeing a guilty verdict.
All right, Christa Ramey, I want to thank you so much for being with me on this Friday evening. Truly appreciate it. You have a great weekend. Right now, it's time for me to say goodbye. It's been a pleasure being with you, and you guys have a great weekend as well. Coming up next, closing arguments with Vinnie Politan. So keep it right here on Court TV, your front row seat to justice.